Hello. Welcome back to STM Narratives. Before we begin, please comment where you are watching from and the time. Let's spread kindness all over the world. It was a sultry, late summer afternoon, the kind that seemed to stretch on forever with its relentless sun and lazy heat. The air hummed with the sound of cicadas and the distant rumble of cars passing along the dusty highway just outside a small, rural town in Georgia. The clouds hung heavy, white and fat in the bright blue sky, promising relief that wouldn't come for hours. The world seemed still, save for the occasional breeze that carried with it the scent of freshly mown grass and earth. Down a quiet stretch of road, a lone car was parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking in steady rhythm. Next to it, a visibly pregnant woman stood, her hand resting on her swollen belly, her face a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. Her car, a faded red sedan, sat lopsided, one of its front tires completely flat. She was stranded, far from home, and with no immediate help in sight. Claire Matthews was 6 months pregnant and had been on her way to visit her sister in Atlanta when her tire blew. She'd felt the car lurch and pull to the side and knew something was wrong. Pulling over, she'd seen the deflated tire and her heart had sunk. She wasn't prepared for this. Her husband, Andrew, was working out of town for the weekend, and she had little experience dealing with car troubles. To make matters worse, her phone had no signal in this remote stretch of the highway. Claire ran a hand through her blonde hair, pulling it away from her sweaty neck. She tried to think rationally, to keep calm for the baby's sake, but her nerves were starting to fray. She could feel her pulse rising, her heartbeat quickening in her chest. What if no one came? What if she was stuck here for hours in the heat, with no way to get help? Just as these thoughts began to overwhelm her, Claire saw something in the distance. A dark figure was walking towards her, growing clearer with each step. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, and walking with a steady, purposeful stride. As he got closer, she could see that he was black, his skin a deep shade of brown, glistening slightly in the heat. He wore a simple t-shirt, jeans, and well-worn boots. His eyes, hidden behind sunglasses, flicked towards the car, assessing the situation in a heartbeat. "Hey there," the man called out in a warm, deep voice as he approached. "Looks like you've got a flat." Claire nodded, feeling a mix of relief and hesitation. "Yeah, I wasn't expecting this," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm pregnant, and I don't really know how to change a tire." The man smiled, and even though she couldn't see his eyes behind his sunglasses, she could feel the kindness in his expression. "No worries," he said, crouching down to inspect the flat tire. "I've got you covered." His name was Marcus Reed, a mechanic from a nearby town. He had been on his way home after visiting his mother when he spotted Claire's car by the roadside. He was used to helping people out, whether it was family, friends, or even strangers, and he'd never been the type to pass by someone in need, especially not a pregnant woman stranded in the middle of nowhere. Claire watched as Marcus went to the trunk of her car, found the spare tire and tools, and immediately set to work. His movements were fluid and confident, as though he could change a tire in his sleep. She couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude wash over her, along with a twinge of guilt. She had felt a flicker of fear when she first saw him, a reaction that she knew, deep down, was rooted in all the stories and fears society had ingrained in her. But Marcus had been nothing but kind, and she hated that those thoughts had even crossed her mind. As Marcus worked, they began to talk. Claire learned that he had grown up in the area, that he owned a small auto repair shop a few towns over, and that he loved fixing cars. He talked about his mother, who had raised him on her own, and how he was working to help pay for her medical bills as she battled cancer. He spoke with such warmth and love for his family that Claire found herself relaxing more and more in his presence. "I'm Claire, by the way," she said, after a while. "I really appreciate you stopping to help. I was getting a little scared out here." Marcus glanced up from his work and flashed a quick smile. "It's no problem at all, Claire. We've all been in tight spots before, and a little help can go a long way. Besides, you shouldn't be out here alone, not with a little one on the way." Claire smiled, her hand instinctively moving to rest on her belly. "Yeah, it's been a bit of a rough day, but you've really saved me here." Just as Marcus was finishing up, tightening the last lug nut on the spare tire, something unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up behind Claire's vehicle, and a man stepped out. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair, dressed in a tailored suit that looked out of place on the dusty roadside. His eyes immediately locked onto Marcus, and his expression darkened. "Claire!" the man called out, his voice sharp with concern. "What's going on here?" It was Claire's father, Robert Matthews. He had been driving back from a business meeting and had coincidentally taken the same route, only to see his daughter's car pulled over on the side of the road. Panic had gripped him when he saw a strange man crouched by her car. "Dad, it's okay," Claire said quickly, stepping forward. "This is Marcus. He's helping me change the tire." But Robert wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on Marcus, suspicion and hostility radiating from him. "You all right, Claire?" he asked, ignoring Marcus entirely. "Do you need me to call someone?" "I'm fine, really," Claire insisted. "Marcus has been helping me. He's a mechanic. He fixed the tire." Robert's face remained tight, his eyes narrowing. "You sure about that?" Claire felt a flash of frustration. "Yes, Dad. He's been nothing but kind. He stopped to help me when I was stranded." Marcus, who had been silent through the exchange, stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. His voice was calm and measured when he finally spoke. "I'm just glad I could help," he said, turning to Claire. "You should be all set now. Just make sure to get that tire replaced as soon as you can." There was no malice in his tone, but the tension in the air was palpable. Claire could feel it. The unspoken words, the assumptions, the barriers that had been thrown up so suddenly. She glanced between her father and Marcus, feeling a deep sense of embarrassment. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Marcus had done nothing wrong, and yet, her father's reaction felt like a slap in the face. "Thank you, Marcus," she said again, her voice sincere. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Marcus nodded. "No problem at all. You take care, all right?" Without another word, he turned and began walking back towards his truck, parked a short distance down the road. Claire watched him go, feeling a pang of regret in her chest. He had been nothing but kind to her, yet the moment her father had arrived, the situation had shifted. An invisible line had been drawn. Robert cleared his throat. "You should be more careful, Claire. You never know who you can trust." Claire rounded on her father, anger rising in her throat. "Dad, he was helping me. He's a good man. You didn't even give him a chance." Robert looked taken aback by her outburst. "I'm just looking out for you. You're pregnant, alone out here, and he stopped to help me when no one else did." Claire snapped. "You weren't here. You didn't see how kind he was. You didn't even talk to him." There was a long pause as Robert's face softened slightly. I worry about you." Claire sighed, her anger deflating. "I know you do. But we can't live our lives making assumptions about people based on how they look. He didn't deserve that." Her father was quiet for a moment, clearly wrestling with his thoughts. Finally, he nodded, albeit reluctantly. "You're right," he admitted. "I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions." As they drove away, Claire couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, the kindness in his voice, the way he had stepped in without hesitation, the way her father had reacted. It made her reflect on the invisible walls people often put up between each other, walls built on fear, misunderstanding, and judgment. But in Marcus, she had seen the power of a simple act of kindness, a reminder that, despite their differences, people could still come together in moments of need. Several days later, Claire returned to the small town where Marcus lived. She brought with her a thank you note and a gift, hoping to express her gratitude properly. When she walked into his shop, Marcus looked up, surprised to see her, but his smile was as warm as ever. "I just wanted to say thank you again," Claire said, handing him the note. "You really helped me, more than you know." Marcus smiled and accepted the note with a nod. "I'm just glad I could be there when you needed someone." As Claire drove home that day, she felt a renewed sense of hope. In a world that often seemed divided, moments like these reminded her that kindness, in its simplest form, could bridge even the widest gaps.